Welcome to the fifth and final episode in a Legendarium series titled A History of Poland, the Deluge, Part 5. In summer 1661, Alexei I of Russia signed a peace treaty with Sweden, which gave up his Baltic conquests for trade concessions. Yet, as always, the common man paid a heavy price in blood and tears for the glory of his ruler. With the war draining gold and silver from Russia, Alexei I began minting copper rubles at the same value as a silver ruble. Workers took wages in copper, but still paid their taxes in far more valuable silver. Within 5 years, a single silver ruble traded for 15 copper rubles, which placed workers at a crippling disadvantage when paying their taxes. In July 1662, posters went up on Moscow's walls calling those who minted copper rubles thieves and traitors. One day when Alexei I left church services, he found himself facing a blister-faced, fist-waving mob demanding the heads of his officials. Alexei I kept calm, swearing an oath to give the mob justice, whatever that meant. Once the crowd began to break up, the Streltsy moved the Tsar to safety. However, a new mob neared the Tsar and began to jeer and insult him during another church service. Alexei I kept his calm, nodding coolly and agreeing with whatever the crowd said as the Streltsy surrounded them. Once he saw that his Streltsy positioned themselves well, Alexei I gave the order to attack. An epic slaughter began, more than 2,600 people murdered within a few hours. By the time Alexei I returned home, he learned that his wife and Tsarina suffered a premature childbirth upon learning that he faced an angry mob. Both Alexei's wife and infant daughter died that day. A grieving Alexei I turned cruel and vengeful. Officials interrogated and tortured suspects for months to learn who organized the copper riots. About 150 men danced the gallows jig, while another 1,000 went on vacation to Siberia with the letter B branded on their foreheads. It stood for Bogle, or rebel. However, the rebels did force Alexei I to take the copper coins out of circulation and even offer small amounts of silver in compensation. Yet will the Poles, whose nation suffered repeated invasion, find any such relief? King Jan II Casimir of Poland, determined to regain as much of his kingdom as he could, readied a massive campaign for summer 1663. He won one victory after another at first, only to bang his head against a small and seemingly weak town called GLUKHOV. He attacked too late in the campaign season, and his troops tried, and often failed, to scramble up ice-slicked walls, while Russian musketeers picked them off one by one. By February 1664, Tsar Alexei I readied an army of relief for GLUKHOV, and the Poles retreated. Jan II Casimir tried to assemble a new army, only to find himself fleeing the army of relief. More Cossack rebellions erupted in Old Hetmanshina by those who still refused Catholic rule after 17 years of war. The Polish king sent Stefan Czarnecki, infamous for his cruelty, to oppress the Cossack rebels in southern Poland. Even on this campaign, the Poles feared Cossack sorcerers. When they took Old Bychów, the Poles executed a hetman named Ivan Zolotarenko with a silver bullet dedicated to the church, for legends said that a normal bullet would never kill a sorcerer. Later, Charnetsky stormed into the hamlet of Subatov, home to Bogdan Khmelnytsky, who started the Deluge with his rebellion 17 years ago. Charnetsky ordered his men to dig up Khmelnytsky and his son Timofey. His soldiers dragged their bones to the main square, where they stomped them, flung filth upon them, and cursed them. This petty revenge did not stop Bogdan Khmelnytsky from being a revered and beloved hero in both Ukraine and Russia. Yet, impotent revenge against the dead hetman would not save Polish power. Jan II Casimir, who dreamed of marching to Moscow at the start of the 1663 campaign, saw his dreams of glory die a slow death. His enfeebled army suffered one defeat after another until they made camp in an open field during a harsh winter. First, his men took to eating their horses, then their own shoe leather, and finally they either died or slipped off one by one. Jan Casimir's country very nearly died with his army. More than 1/3 of Poland's people died during the wars that became known as the Deluge. That is a total of 3.5 million people. Weary of the endless slaughter, Poland and Russia began talks which ended with the Truce of Andrusovo on January 30th, 1667. Alexei I of Russia could claim a titanic gain, having won modern Ukraine up to the left bank of the Dnieper, along with the ancient city of Kiev, which he purchased for 146,000 rubles. He also kept Smolensk, restoring Russia's borders to those before the time of troubles. Russia had recovered from the time of troubles and restored herself to her former glory. Would Poland be able to do the same thing after the Deluge? She would not. With the war finally over, Jan II Casimir, now ruling over a shrunken Poland, called for legal reforms that would give more power to the king. A king who could act decisively and have control over the army and treasury could have avoided the horrors of the Deluge. Jan II Casimir sought to strike at the very source of noble power, their right to elect whichever king they want. However, the nobles of Poland would have no such thing. They loved what they called their golden anarchy too much to give it up to anyone, whether the Russian Tsar or a Polish king. The disgraced Jan II Casimir abdicated the throne and fled to France, where he lived out his days as a monk in the Abbey of Saint-Germain-de-Paris. And Poland itself would be dismantled in part by the Russian Empire within a century. That wraps things up for this episode of the Legendarium. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, press like. If you want to see more, press subscribe. And if you've got anything to say, let me know in the comments section. Thanks again for joining me, and I hope that you have a great rest of the day.